You know, it's astonishing how many people don't realize that their entire day, and, by extension, their entire life, is being shaped by what they do in the first 10 minutes after they wake up. We wake up and immediately hand over our power. We check our phones. We scroll. We dive straight into other people's thoughts, demands, noise. Without even noticing it, we allow the outside world to decide how we feel, how we think, and what we believe is possible that day. This is not just a modern bad habit. It is, philosophically speaking, a surrender of authority over your own consciousness. And when you surrender your consciousness, you surrender your reality. Florence Scovel Shinn often spoke of the power of the word. That whatever you speak or dwell on first thing in the morning becomes law in your life. Not metaphorically, spiritually and mentally. It becomes the groundwork upon which your day is built. The first thoughts you entertain, the first emotions you allow to settle into your body. These aren't random. They are causes. Everything that follows is an effect. If you start your morning with stress, with anxiety, with a sense of rushing, you will attract more things to feel stressed and rushed about. Why? Because your mind has been conditioned to look for them. The reticular activating system, the brain's internal filter, will tune your focus toward chaos, toward urgency, toward fear. And that isn't just neuroscience. It's metaphysical law. You see what you believe, and you manifest what you expect. Now think about the alternative. Imagine waking up and choosing to sit in stillness, even if just for a moment, to breathe deeply, to allow yourself to arrive in the present moment before the world begins asking anything of you. Imagine beginning the day not by reacting, but by creating. Internally, mentally, emotionally. That is where the shift happens. When you claim the morning, you claim the narrative. You become the author of your own script instead of a character in someone else's. That first moment of wakefulness is a sacred space. It's when the subconscious mind is most open, highly impressionable, still lingering between sleep and waking thought. Whatever you impress upon it in that brief window, it will carry forward. It doesn't question, it obeys. So why give it fear? Why feed it noise? Why hand it a screen full of comparison, conflict, or concern? What you do in that first quiet space is not about productivity. This is not some hustle culture tactic to get ahead. This is about alignment. It's about reminding yourself, I am not here to survive the day, I am here to shape it, to bring to it what I want to see reflected back. And this doesn't require hours of meditation or rigid routines. It can be as simple as one deep breath with awareness, one clear intention, one silent affirmation. I am centered. I am safe. I choose peace. When practiced daily, this becomes a pattern, not of thought but of being, a different kind of presence, one that magnetizes clarity and resilience, one that no longer bends with the chows of the world but quietly bends the world toward itself. So I'll leave you with this. You're not just waking up to a new day, you're waking up to the chance to remember who you really are. And that is where everything changes. Before the world rushes in, before you speak a word or even move from your bed, there exists a rare and powerful moment. It's the in-between spacing, not fully asleep, not yet fully awake. And in that space, something sacred is happening. Your subconscious mind, the deepest part of your inner self, is wide open, unguarded, unfiltered, and waiting for instruction. This is why the most important morning habit isn't checking your schedule or hydrating or stretching, though those may have their place. The most transformational habit is this silent visualization with faith. 10 minutes, maybe less. No movement, no multitasking. Just pure, uninterrupted awareness and imagination. But let me be clear, this is not daydreaming. This is deliberate mental authorship. It's about rehearsing your highest self, not as a fantasy, but as a felt reality. Florence Scovel Shinn said, "Man can only receive what he sees himself receiving. Not what he wishes, not what he begs for, but what he internally claims is already his." Visualization, then, becomes a form of spiritual agreement. You are impressing upon your subconscious the image of the life you are ready to receive, and when done properly, with faith and repetition, it begins to manifest outward. Now, the science backs this too. Studies in neuroscience show that when you visualize something vividly, your brain activates many of the same regions, as if you were actually doing that thing. It doesn't fully differentiate between what is real and what is imagined. Which means that when you wake up and visualize, with emotion, your goals as already achieved, your relationships already healed, your confidence already present, your brain starts building neural pathways to support that identity. The more often you do it, the more natural it becomes to act in alignment with that version of you. But here's where most people fall short. They visualize their desires with hesitation. They look at their dreams through the lens of possibility instead of inevitability. And that subtle doubt, however small, is enough to block the very outcomes they're reaching for. This is why Florence emphasized faith. She often said, "Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen." What she meant is simple: your vision must be believed before it is seen. It must be treated as real now, not someday. So, when you practice this morning habit, you don't say, "I hope I'll be confident today." You see yourself walking confidently into that meeting. You feel the tone of your voice. You see the room respond. You imagine the peace in your body, the clarity in your thoughts. Not as a future event, but as a current truth. You do not negotiate with reality, you declare it. And the silence matters. Silence is the sacred container. In silence, the noise of doubt fades. Your inner dialogue slows. And you enter the deeper chamber of self where creation actually begins. You're not asking the world to change. You're changing yourself. And the world bends to meet it. If there's one thing to remember, it's this: your imagination is not childish. It is not naive. It is the blueprint of your destiny. And when you bring faith into that picture, faith without resistance, you begin to operate in harmony with the universal law that Florence so often spoke of. That law says this: what you see and believe within, you shall hold without. So tomorrow morning, before you reach for phone or your coffee or your to-do list, stop, close your eyes, enter the silence, and ask yourself, what would it look like to walk through today as the highest version of me? See it. Feel it. Know it. Because the future doesn't begin sometime later. It begins in you, the moment you decide to believe. Most people wake up and immediately hand over the keys to their day. Before they've even had a conscious thought of their own, they're scrolling through messages, checking emails, reacting to headlines or notifications, essentially inviting the world to dictate their mental and emotional state. What they don't realize is that they're not just looking at a screen, they're entering a cycle of reaction, and once that pattern begins, it's incredibly hard to break. When you begin your day in reaction, you are already one step behind. Your mind becomes cluttered before it has had the chance to align. Your nervous system is activated before you've even decided what you want to feel. You're not in the driver's seat. You're a passenger, responding to someone else's urgency, someone else's timeline, someone else's noise. And over time, this becomes not just a habit, but an identity. You begin to think of yourself as someone who is constantly catching up, constantly overwhelmed, constantly on edge. Florence Scovel Shinn spoke often of the law of non-resistance, that we must not meet force with force, chaos with chaos, but instead align with peace, clarity, and truth. To begin your day in a reactive state is to resist reality instead of creating it. It is to let the world write your script before you've had a chance to hold the pen. Psychologically, this has real consequences. The first 30 minutes after you wake up are when your brain is moving from theta to alpha to beta states. In this window, your mind is particularly sensitive to suggestion. It's why marketers love morning radio and why habits practiced early tend to stick. What you feed your mind in those moments doesn't influence your mood. It sets the trajectory of your entire thought process for the day. If you start in fear, in tension, in distraction, your brain will begin looking for things that match that state. This is the principle of confirmation bias. We find what we expect to see. Now imagine the opposite. Imagine starting your morning with deliberate stillness, a moment of reflection, a breath of gratitude, a decision to pause before engaging. That pause is not weakness. It is mastery. It is the moment when you reclaim authorship of your day and your mind. You are no longer reacting, you are choosing. You are no longer pulled by circumstance. You are anchored in consciousness. There is a profound spiritual truth here, one that Florence often emphasized. Man's only enemy is himself. When we live in constant reaction, we are not fighting the world. We are resisting our own power. We are forgetting that life responds to our inner state, not just our outer actions. So when you break the cycle of reactivity, you don't just slow down, you rise above. You step into a higher dimension of thought, one that isn't tossed by the winds of urgency or chaos. And from that elevated space, you can see more clearly. You can act with intention, speak with clarity, move with purpose. You're no longer a product of your circumstances. You're a cause, not an effect. This is why reclaiming your morning is so powerful. It's not about productivity hacks or trendy routines. It's about remembering that your mind is sacred space. And the moment you wake, you either fill it with noise, or you fill it with meaning. So tomorrow, when your eyes open, ask yourself, do I want to be a reaction to the world, or a force within it? The answer to that question might just change everything. There's something profoundly underrated about the power of just one sentence. One clear, affirmative line spoken into the quiet of the morning with full attention and emotion. Not a vague wish, not a desperate plea, but a firm declaration of truth. Florence Scovel Shinn called these affirmations, but not in the casual or superficial sense that the word has come to mean today. For her, an affirmation was a spiritual command, a tool to impress divine order onto a disordered world. It wasn't just positive thinking. It was creative speech aligned with universal law. When you choose one line each morning, just one, and speak it with belief, you're not simply motivating yourself. You're issuing a decree to your subconscious mind. And more importantly, you're rewriting the script that your inner world is running on, often without your awareness. Because let's be honesting, most people wake up and unconsciously recite affirmations all the time. Only their sound like, I'm so behind. Nothing ever works for me. This day's already a mess. These are affirmations too. Only destructive ones. Repeated often enough, they sink into the subconscious and become self-fulfilling. Florence taught that man's word is his wand filled with magic and power. She meant that your words carry a vibrational authority. They shape your reality by directing your thoughts, your emotions, your actions, and, ultimately, your outcomes. So why not make that power conscious? Why not choose the one phrase that's going to anchor you in truth before the day pulls you in every direction? Let me give you an example. Suppose you wake up and saying, everything I need is already within me. At first, it may feel simple, maybe even glitchy. But don't let that fool you. The power is not in the novelty. It's in the repetition with belief. When you speak that line slowly, with presence, you begin to override the subtle voice of lack that most people carry. You no longer walk into your day seeking approval, validation, or answers from the outside. You walk in full, complete. You begin to operate from sufficiency, not scarcity. Another example might be, I walk in faith, not fear. Say it once, and your nervous system might not respond. But say it every day, with conviction, and something inside you starts to shift. You stop asking what if it goes wrong, and start assuming what if it's already working out. That one sentence becomes your inner compass. Especially in moments of uncertainty, it gives you a place to return to, a mental and spiritual center. Psychologically, this is known as cognitive priming. The brain tends to notice, interpret, and act upon information that aligns with whatever idea it's been primed with. Your chosen affirmation becomes a filter through which you experience the day. And spiritually, it's even deeper. You are aligning your vibration with the outcome you seek, which, as Florence constantly reminded us, is the first step to manifesting it. But it's not about stacking dozens of affirmations like a to-do list. In fact, the opposite is true. One line, deeply felt, is more powerful than 100 lines said with no emotion. You don't need quantity. You need quality, clarity, belief. Choose the phrase that resonates most with the version of you that you're stepping into. Speak it not as a wish, but as if it's already true, because spiritually it is. And when doubt creeps in, and it will, return to the affirmation, not to convince yourself, but to remember. You're not trying to make something happen. You're aligning with what's already yours. So tomorrow morning, when your eyes open and your mind begins to wander, don't leave it to chance. Choose one line. Let it be your foundation, your compass, your quiet declaration to the universe. And speak it like you mean it. Because when you do, life listens. There's a quiet, almost invisible force that shapes your entire life. Not just your mood, not just your morning, but your identity. That force is consistency. It's the daily doing. The small choices repeated until they no longer feel like choices, but like parts of who you are. And the irony is, most people don't realize that they're already practicing consistency. Just in the wrong direction. Every time you hit snooze, you reinforce the idea that comfort is more important than momentum. Every morning you reach for your phone before reaching inward, you teach your mind to seek distraction before clarity. These things seem trivial in isolation. One skipped breathwork session, one ignored affirmation, one morning lost to scrolling. But Florence Scovel Shinn understood something vital. That nothing is trivial when it comes to the subconscious mind. Every repetition is a form of instruction, and your life is simply the outer reflection of those repeated instructions, she said. The game of life is a game of boomerangs. Our thoughts, deeds, and words return to us sooner or later, with astounding accuracy. The patterns we establish, especially in the quiet, early hours of the day, don't just stay contained within that hour. They ripple forward. They become habits. Habits become character, and character becomes destiny. Psychologically, this is about more than willpower. It's about identity reinforcement. When you engage in a positive morning ritual, even something as seemingly simple as repeating single affirmation or taking 5 conscious breaths, you are not just doing an activity, you are casting a vote for the type of person you believe yourself to be. And the brain takes notes. Over time, it begins to align your self-image with the actions you repeat. This is how you become someone who no longer tries to be disciplined. You simply are. Someone who no longer hopes to be centered, you just show up that way. But this requires patience. We live in a world addicted to instant results. People want transformation without repetition. They want spiritual depth without spiritual practice. But the inner work, the morning alignment, it doesn't always give immediate rewards. That's why it's so powerful. Because it builds something far more enduring than motivation. It builds character. And let's be honest, your mind will resist. There will be mornings where you don't feel like doing it, where nothing feels profound, and the silence feels empty. That's okay. Florence would say that those are the moments that matter most. Because it's not just about what you feel. It's about what you're feeding. On the surface, it may feel like nothing's happening, but beneath the surface, your subconscious is watching, listening, absorbing. That's why I tell people, don't ask if it's working. Ask if you're becoming. You may not see the results in 3 days, but watch who you are in 3 months. Or better yet, watch who you aren't anymore. The version of you who doubted, who delayed, who depended on external motivation to move forward. This is not about perfection. You don't need flawless streaks or rigid discipline. What you need is devotion. A quiet, steady return to the practice that grounds you. Not because someone told you to do it, but because you remember what happens when you don't. So yes, one powerful morning habit can change everything. But only if you let it become more than a habit. Let it become a way of being, a ritual of remembrance, a sacred declaration that each morning, no matter what came before, you choose again. Because in the end, transformation doesn't come from what you occasionally do when you feel inspired. It comes from what you consistently do when you don't. And that, right there, is where real power begins. There's one final truth that threads through everything we've talked about. Through the silence, the visualization, the affirmation, and the discipline. And it's this: you must walk by faith, not by sight. If you begin your day grounded only in what your physical senses tell you, you'll always be limited by your current circumstances. You'll only believe in what already exists. And you'll build your life around evidence, not vision. But transformation, true, lasting transformation, requires something deeper. It requires that you believe before you see. Florence Scovel Shinn built her entire philosophy on this principle. She taught that the invisible realm, the world of thoughts, beliefs, imagination, intuition, is not less real than the visible. It is more real, because it's the source. Everything you see in your outer world began first as a thought, an intention, a feeling. To shape the visible, you must first become fluent in the invisible. That's what faith is. Not blind hope, but inner certainty. It's not wishing, it's knowing. Now here's the challenge. Most people live with the idea that they'll feel peaceful once their life becomes peaceful. That they'll feel successful once they achieve success. That they'll feel confident once someone tells them they're good enough. But that sequence is completely backward. You don't wait for peace, you bring peace. You don't wait for proof, you become the evidence. Faith demands that you generate from within what the world has not yet mirrored back to you. And this is why morning is so critical, because morning is when the mind is most open and most fragile. If you wake up and anchor yourself to fear, scarcity, or uncertainty, that becomes your lens for the day. You unconsciously filter every experience through that mindset. But when you begin the day with faith, quiet, confident, unshakable faith, you are aligning yourself with what Florence called the divine design. You are walking in trust, not because you can predict the outcome, but because you trust the principle that your thoughts, your beliefs, and your words are shaping reality, even when nothing appears to be happening yet. This takes courage, because faith often requires you to act in direct contradiction to what the world is showing you. You'll have to speak abundance when the bank account is low. You'll have to affirm healing while the symptoms still linger. You'll have to declare clarity when your path still looks foggy. That's not delusion. That's spiritual maturity. Faith isn't pretending everything is perfect. It's knowing that the unseen is already moving in your favor. Florence once wrote, "The game of life is not won by force, but by faith." That's not just poetic, it's practical. Force is what we use when we don't trust timing, when we're trying to control every outcome. But faith is surrender with authority. It's letting go of resistance. Not to give up, but to make space for grace. And when you start your morning rooted in that kind of presence, the entire day bends differently. You're no longer driven by fear. You're led by something higher. You stop needing constant reassurance. You stop chasing answers. You begin to embody a calm that doesn't come from external validation, but from internal alignment. And people feel that. Your energy changes before your circumstances do. That's the secret most people miss. So if there's one final shift to make, one that can elevate everything else, it's this: wake up and remember that the invisible holds the blueprint. Let your faith be louder than your doubt. Let it be the compass that guides your vision, your voice, your decisions. Because in the end, the world may ask for results, but life itself is always asking a deeper question: can you believe before it becomes real? And if you can, then everything, truly everything, begins to change.